little bit longer lunch. We'll decide then, okay? We'll come back from lunch. We will wrap the day with supportive interactions and a really, really amazing activity called the limbs. Okay? How are we feeling? Good. All right. So we had some homework last night. Oh, okay, before we do the homework, learning objectives. Can someone volunteer to read the first two bullets for me? Here you go.
Define culture, cultural competency, and cultural humility. Describe the relationship between competency and humility.
All right, thank you. Did I see her here?
Three principles of cultural humility. List and describe the entities, attributes, and outcomes of cultural humility.
Thank you. Who want to wrap up? Let me come over here. Thank you.
Use an interactive exercise to examine and attribute an attribute of cultural humility in practice. Use peer sharing and intercultural dialogue to examine expectations of supportive interactions in healthcare. Use self-reflection to increase participants' self-awareness of personal identities.
Thank you so very much. So, day 2 is all about culture. Not only the culture that we may share as individuals, but also the culture that we share as an organization, right? And we have to be mindful that they can be one and the same, but oftentimes they are different, right? And that difference, again, can either help someone be healthier or push them away from health, okay? So we're going to dive deeper into competence and humility and really spend some time between the two, you know. Some folks are going towards a cultural humble practice. Some folks want to stay at competency. So we're going to dive deeper, find out more. Again, did I have a question? Okay. Again, we will list and describe antecedents, attributes, and outcomes of humility. Towards the end of the day, we will break off into some small groups so we can really do some peer sharing and really, again, like pull back the onion layer as we think about culture. And finally, we will talk about some tools that we can use for self-reflection. Okay? Again, we have our community agreements on the screen, but we also have the one that we added on our wall. Okay? At any time, if we need to add something, just let us know, and we will continue the conversation.
I have one.
Oh, please.
So as we continue with sharing, that we're mindful not to use a lot of jargon, because I think that when we're dealing, I have one is a request that as we continue with sharing, that we're mindful of using jargon. So just like when you're talking, for me, when I talk with the community, I need to make sure that my narratives are something where I'm meeting them and I'm not sharing something that they might not be aware of. So as we start talking about what cultural this humility looks like, even when we talk about stigma, that if you use jargon, share what that means with the group so that we can all learn.
Thank you. And I want to bring our attention to a sheet that we added yesterday, and that is the Knowledge Corner. Again, the Knowledge Corner, if we have like new acronyms or any additional information that we want to share, throw it on a Post-it note. One of us can add it to here. Okay? Anything else? Community garden. So we added a few things to the community garden. Yesterday, status neutral approaches, viral load does not equal value, a conversation around perception on intention.
Incentives.
Oh, that's a C. Okay. Incentives on diagnostic testing in public spaces. So I think I grouped these three together because these could definitely be a different approach into community. You know, when we truly think about status neutral spaces, it's growing more important to create spaces where everyone not only are welcome, but everyone is supported. You know, the days where there was a waiting room for people living with HIV and people without HIV is really gone. You know, because we continue to hear how stigmatizing those spaces are. When you truly think about status neutral approaches, it's whole healthcare. You know, it's truly whole healthcare. It's figuring out the best way not only to provide health, but also provide those wraparound services that so many individuals are also needing to be, you know, the healthiest. We have some resources that we definitely will share on day 5 during our resource section. So we'll, you know, just continue to create that compendium, okay? What else is up here? Boundaries while powerful. Do anyone remember who wrote that one? Boundaries while powerful?
I wrote that, but Jasmine mentioned
Yes.
bountiful. I don't know if I'm saying that word right, but I thought that was a really great.
That was your
way to
new-
capture that.
That was the word that you created. I remember. Okay. Okay, I'm back now. Ignorance. Ignorance and clinging is a defense mechanism. Yes, we talk about that towards the end of Cultural Humility Part 2. So if your organization is not, you know, displaying, if your organization is not a place that use humble practices, one of the defense mechanisms that will be present is ignorance. Some of those other defense mechanisms that will be present will be like a lot of ego as well. So we dive deeper into those today. Okay? I think the last one. How do we address harms in real time together without shutting down combo? I think one of the ways that we can address harm in real time, or even like traumatic experiences in real time, and we added this to our agreements yesterday, but it's the conversation of the oops and ouch. You know, I've been in trainings where oops have occurred, you know, and as a result of the occurrence, it's, you know, hey, let's pause, let's discuss what happened, how it could have been taken, how it was taken, you know, and create solutions on limiting it from happening again. I think when we think about the ouch is much, it hits harder, you know, so that would definitely be a longer, like, hard stop. Okay, let me get it.
I think yesterday there was some part of the conversation that we was having, and I think intent versus impact is something that we should either make a community agreement
Okay.
or not, because sometimes people don't intend to say things that are stigmatizing, but it's the impact of what they're saying
Intent
versus impact.
Okay. Are we okay with adding intent versus impact? Yeah. Oh, baby, I'm getting thick. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry being at home during that COVID. Put on 1 extra pound, honey. You can't even move through these eyes like I used to. I'm so sorry, Lord. I almost took out her coffee cup. So big. Thick, honey. Language dump. Again, as we add things to the language dump, please add something to the language garden. Okay? one day. Is your Renee gonna make me do it again, Lord. so mean to me, Renee. Go ahead.
I added something to the language.
Okay.
Dump and garden. We are using the word brothers and sisters, and there are some people that exist outside of the binary. So I put over there on the garden, fam, Conrad, sibling. It kind of makes it a gender neutral space instead of being so binary, because people do exist outside of the binary.
Thank you for that. Everyone understands that one? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Oh, Lord. Thank you, okay. So being mindful when we are using gendered words.
Oh, okay, yes.
Go ahead, please explain
Lady
it.
Book said, please dive into it a
Just to
little
make
bit.
sure
To make sure everybody
we
understands.
in the room.
Okay.
I don't wanna go.
So who would like to help us explain how bros or sis is gendered and some individuals exist in a non-gendered space?
Yes.
So, if you are a non-binary person and you don't identify as male or female, and you're constantly just going to the binary, which is just male and female, you are saying, I don't see you. Or you might think that it doesn't exist because you don't agree with it. And that there are people that exist, just like I said, that I'm never whole in space with people because they see me as a cisgender person, but actually I'm a trans person. I don't identify with being male or female, so I'm never whole in a group of people unless they really know me. And saying brothers and sisters is like, I feel like it's outdated, and you're erasing people that don't agree with that. I don't agree with a gender system.
And I'll just add that it's, I'm treading lightly, but I want you to understand, it's almost like othering. Remember we talked about othering? So if you say brothers and sisters, a person can feel othered, right? And also it's like how you show up in a space depends on how you feel welcome, right? And accepted and affirmed. And Renee says they don't show up or feel whole, right, in a lot of spaces because they can't show up as their full self. Well, if we want to make this space a space that feels better than other spaces for Renee and those people that are non-binary, then the best way is to use gender-neutral pronouns. So, and I would add friends. Friend, like if you can't say sibling, just say friend or fam or like cuz. We already been calling each other cuz. So there's several words that you can use, and it's just to not only make this space safe for non-binary people, but to take that piece of information back as well as something you learned in this session.
Absolutely. Let's take this question and we'll come over here.
Do you have a honorary that we could use? You know, you have Mr. and Ma'am, Sir, Mr. Ma'am, Sir. You have, how am I saying it right? Mr. Miss. Do you have an honorary you prefer as non-binary?
I don't have an honorific. I use mix with MX.
Okay, I've heard mixed. Yeah.
I don't say that's for everybody because that's me.
Yeah.
Because you have some people that them there Z, and I don't do that. I don't go that. I'm not that complex. I don't even need the honorific Mr. or Miss if you're even trying to be polite. I just need you to understand that I'm Renee, and you can call me Renee if you can't even get that right.
Let me grab this question right here.
Hi. I don't want it to be a question.
Okay.
But
comment.
Yeah, comment. When we go to language dump, in the arena, we talk about language dump, but in the community, they may still be going by the languages that we don't.
Correct.
You understand? So when you have outreach workers or teams that be in the community and they're talking different than the community, then the community may not be accepting. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I was out of the loop pretty much from 2012 to maybe 2021. And I had several surgeries on my head, and cancer and all of that. And so I'll have Joyce or Dion or somebody to bounce off on that I volunteer with and ask what is the different languages that's being used so I can be updated on it. Because a lot of the things that I forgot or it just was erased from me because of my medical condition. So I have to keep going to them, asking them what is the new language? What is the new language? Because I don't know. So I'm putting myself in a community or that is not familiar with the languages that's been don't.
And I think, thank you for that. And again, I think that is a piece of, that's much of our conversation today. You know, so probably 3 slides from now, we begin to talk about the definition of culture. And one of the definitions that we use is the software of the mind, right? When you think about software, you think about it's always updating. I said it yesterday within my opening that, you know, our communities is dynamic, meaning our community is always changing. You know, and having a language garden or in a language dump, again, it just supports that always changing. You know, I think we are leading with a growth mindset and being mindful that we will not get it 100% right anytime, you know, but it's, again, doing the work to be closer to right, you know. So when one of our cousins tell us, you know, that we can create a more enriched environment by changing, by updating and being mindful of the language that we use, it's our responsibility to meet them where they are and say, cool, you know, and we'll move on, okay? Three things, please.
I have a question.
Okay, I can take a question.
How do you console a person that is in the community, like Renee said, and they look one way, but they don't address either gender? And in a community, in the groups, they are not accepted because they don't identify. So what do you do to a person like that? I have a friend that lives in Atlanta, and they don't identify as trans, gender non-conforming, but they look like a man, but you know, and they don't get in the community, they don't get in organizations because they won't identify, they won't be named he, she, them, or they, or any of the acronyms.
I think it's not, it's a phenotypic thing, right? So it's not about what someone looks like. It's, again, like greeting them and meeting them in respect. Okay, they have a name. So at the simplest, you know, use their name. Correct? Would you say that's correct?
I would say that's correct, but I also said that's part of language justice is that a person has a right to be seen.
Yeah.
And language justice is the way that we are doing that. Because if I tell you that I use they, them, and their, and she with certain people, I'm already telling you how to treat me.
Yeah.
And it's just part of language justice that I need to be seen because I've told you how to treat me. Yeah. And you have a right to be seen some kind of way. I can't be invisible all the time. Just because I look a certain way, I identify as trans. And I may have some stubble today. I may have a smooth face tomorrow. But I still am trans. I'm gonna wake up trans. I'm gonna die trans. And I'm telling you who I am.
Yeah.
Believe me.
So listen. This is gonna be my last one.
I had a question.
Can I take your question later?
Yes, you.
Can you write your question on a Post-it note for me?
Yes, I certainly.
Thank you so very much.
Yes. I just think that we need to be a little bit more intentional and understand the cycle that's happening. So when people don't feel seen, when they don't feel validated, they run away from their community. I think we need to be looking inward, making space and having grace for people who don't know to have those questions answered in a safe space like this. So if anybody is in a space where they're feeling like they can't show up as themselves because you're going to be deemed ignorant, I think this is the space to do that. There are a lot of people that I work with, like Renee, and it's a really fucked up cycle, y'all. Everybody's stepping on eggshells, everybody's scared, and I would just love to see this space become safe, and us all grow together, because Renee's not the only one out here. I'm damn sure Renee isn't the only one in this room. So let's just pour into each other and be courageous and have these uncomfortable conversations. That's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you. Oh, I'm like, what is this? Sign-in sheet, just a reminder, please sign in.
And is this there, if I do it online, I don't have to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, our journal assignment. We had a journal assignment last night, and the question or the prompt was, when thinking about mental modes, those deeply held beliefs and assumptions that influence one's action, what are the mental modes of your organization or community? Again, thinking about those deep held beliefs, okay, that influence one's actions. What are the mental modes of your organization or community? Did we have one or two that would like to share? Thank you.
I work for an abolitionist organization led by Black folks, and many folks still have a really hard time with anti-Blackness without even knowing it, right? Like they're like, she was so mean and she's not, working with us, and it's like, okay, but what is that, right? Like she just said no to you, and that's okay. She should say no to you. She's your boss. So I think that's something that we really struggle with a lot, even though we are led by Black folks and are invested in, especially like formerly incarcerated Black folks, and that is a big disconnect in our organization.
Thank you. Oh,
I spent a lot of time thinking about the mental modes of the community, because yesterday I found something very interesting last night when I sat and thought about this. We talked a lot about race and its impact. There was a missing piece for me. That piece was race is a construct, and it's clear that we've been denigrated and mistreated and devalued by others who are not Black. We didn't talk about how Black people treat us. We're ASOs, we are in our communities. Black people treat us worse than probably anybody else. And to me, it makes sense, that's a missing link for me. How do we talk about race and not talk about how we as ASOs and the Black community generally treats LGBT people? I mean, there's a disconnect. The church, let's say church, and I've been in church all my life. I'm 64 years old, love the church. Love the Lord, love the church, but the church has been the main influencer when it comes to shame and denigration of our community. I thought about the Othering cartoon, and I thought about how we did that whole discussion about Black people and being mistreated. But we didn't talk about how Blacks, we were on the left side, talking about how we've been mistreated. And then we go to the right side, and it's, all right, LGBT people, this is how Blacks are treating us. And I just don't think we can get around that. The impact of is we've gone from being mistreated to now, and othering, to now we're on the other side, they're on the other side, othering us as LGBT people and their allies who are working in ASOs and working in our communities. There is a disconnect. We leave our communities, we don't get care, We're assaulted and killed in our communities, and it's kind of akin to the whole blacks don't talk about violence in our community because we're not allowed to say black on black crime anymore. And yet, if I walk out my door in my neighborhood where I own a home, I'm more likely to be killed by somebody in my own neighborhood. And there's a thing, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to cut it. Jesse Jackson made a statement years ago that made me mad as hell. And I love Jesse Jackson, and he's done some really great things. But the black LGBT community was asking him, when are you, as black people, going to get around to including us? Where does that intersectionality begin? Because we don't see it. His response to the community was, well, how can you think about saving your house? No, how can you think about saving your room when the house is on fire? But I'm at a point now in life, I'm 64 years old. I don't give a damn about the house being on fire. If you're not going to try to save my room, I don't care about the house burning down. It makes me be very, very conscious about what I embraced as black. I've been black since the day I was born. My birth certificate, like Renee says, colored. I was born in Monroe, Louisiana. I saw what Jim Crow did. I saw the signs and everything. I'm at a point now where I'm not accepting anything from the black community that does not value me or make me feel seen. But there is a piece, and maybe that belongs on the community garden, but there's a piece that's missing for me when we talk about racism. Because how do we talk about how other people treat us if we don't talk about how our own people treat us in our own communities, and we're not even safe there?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I think tomorrow we begin the dialogue on privilege and something that you mentioned, intersectionality. I think you always have to remember, even as individuals of a marginalized group, you know, if we are looking race, if we are looking gender expression or gender or orientation, marginalized people can still promote and support supremacy and supremacist beliefs. Okay? Like, supremacy don't care the operator. You know, it just has to be operated, you know? So even us in a smaller group, you know, can other or negatively impact, you know, others of the same group. You know, it's cyclical, you know. But we definitely dive deeper tomorrow in those subjects, okay? Did I see a hand over here? I'll grab you too.
I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I believe the attitude of providers has to begin with principles that govern the department. They must impart dignity and integrity and go beyond what is their job. Providers must change the framework from which they work. They must serve, deliver, and uplift people they're serving. They need to know that they are not the disease. You can't convince them they are not the diagnosis unless you believe they're not the diagnosis.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. The mental mode of what I believe, or my organization, is politics. Their mindset is always politics first and power. They want to have control over everything that we do that serves the clients, and in my mind that affects the staff as well from the stress, if nothing else. But number one thing, their thought process is, hey, if I save the money, I look good. That helps me go up the food chain, which that is not our purpose. Our purpose is to serve our clients. So we talking a position of, okay, if I can't have the last word on how this organization is ran, then we're gonna restrict you all from what you do. And as the recipient office, even though we don't serve clients personally, our relationship with the sub-recipient is affected because we can't get our jobs done from worried about the politics that's above and it's everywhere, which filters down to everything that's done. So that is the minimal of what I believe our organization is based on.
Thank you. So policy, politics.
My thoughts is that, the dialogue we're going through, we need to open it up more, because a lot of times it's a lot of blockage that's unnecessary, because we're not filtering the avenues that can be crossed because something didn't get to one person that should have got there, and then the next part is not being took care of because the last part is left behind. And the intersections are crossing, and then it's filtered and nobody's heard nobody, And I think we need to simplify that, because we read a lot of big words and we read a lot of things, but the community, sometimes you just gotta break it down to where they can understand it. Because if I'm sitting in the community and I don't understand, I'm just gonna sit there. But if I break it down to where somebody can understand, then I'm gonna get a reaction from them, And I think sometimes we get ahead of ourselves by we learn a lot in journals, but the words don't resonate with the people we trying to help because they're not educated as we are. Not saying that they're dumb or anything, but you have to break it down to where they can understand it, and then in fact rises because you're reaching out to the community that we're trying to reach on a spectrum to where they can understand. Understanding is the biggest key that's misunderstood today. Because you're going to say, well, I don't understand, I don't care about it. But in reality, what you don't understand means more to you. But if it's not explained to you, then how can you understand it? So I think we need to turn down the level of talking to people to where we broaden it right to where they can understand what they're filling out for and what they're going through. And then we get escalated to make all of us better. And that's just my opinion.
Thank you. All ties lift boats. All ties lift boats. Thank you. Any last minute ones?
Did you want to share too?
Let me grab Renee.
I agree with him, but what I call it is the language of accessibility. It's not really talking down because that's saying that you're looking down on that person, but also just meeting them where they are is the language of accessibility that it's just like in Memphis. We know that the average read level in the city of Memphis is 6th grade, and that's the level of comprehension. So it's just a language of accessibility. You can't be too academic with some people because you're not reaching them where they are. It's like you're talking down to them.
Accessibility. Let's go here. I'm a wrap with Jamie, okay? And then Jasmine is going to begin our transition into culture.
I think for our organization, what I wrote in is the pronouns. People that don't work in the field or don't interact with clients don't understand, and they thought, oh, that's the gay community, or that's them and that's us, and putting the pronouns out.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, with the pronouns, but we use pronouns every day. This is nothing new. If you misgender a dog, You say, oh, your dog is cute. She's cute. And then you say, oh, that's a he. You won't misgender that dog again, but you will misgender a person again.
Mic drop.
Yeah, that's some truth. I'm like, I don't want to mic now. I just wanted to say a special thank you for bringing out, for representing the Part A from this gentleman right here, because I used to work in a Part A office, and when you think of your running white monies, you know, those Part A's are your city, county, health departments, and I really appreciated the point in representation for folks who don't do the direct service, like our clinics or CBOs or ASOs, because they are highly political, because that's involving your mayor or your city council or other folks. And you definitely have some other Part A colleagues in the room, and so I just wanted to say I really appreciated that. But now, y'all, can we put our hands together or some snaps? Because I think we're getting ready to go into our first section today with the one and only Jasmine. Oh, I don't know. Do you want the hand mic or do you want the...
I'll take the hand mic.
Okay.
Just make sure everybody has mic. Hey, y'all. Good morning. How's everybody feeling after last night?
Good.
Good. So, this conversation is already getting good, right? And a lot of what we're talking about, well, what you all are talking about is some of the questions and some of the comments that you have directly flow into what these next few days will look like, right? So we're talking about culture, right? We're talking about cultural humility. So this is cultural humility part 1. First thing I want to say is we talked about culture. Somebody give me, where's the mic? I need the other mic, y'all. All right, thank you, Leotis. Come on, we got Vanna Black. Guess you Vanna Black number 2. I couldn't think of a better name. All right, somebody give me the definition of culture. And we're going to participate. Let's get up. Somebody has a definition of culture. I have the textbook definition. I want to know what you think culture is.
I think it's...
No, I want both comments.
I think culture is a particular area maybe, or a certain set of individuals. Can't come up with a better.
Okay, I like that one. We're going to go to Jovan then. You.
I think culture is a practice, tradition. It's a norm of a group of people. It's a routine, consistent behavior, patterns, things like that.
Okay. One more, then we're going to switch words.
I feel culture is me, how I feel, because I'm a culture within myself about others.
Okay.
Here, we'll go this.
It's your heritage and your community, because you're just to your community and your environment. So it's kind of cultural. Say Thanksgiving, it's a cultural holiday. Christmas is a cultural holiday. And we acknowledge those patrons and holidays in a cultural way.
All right, next word, humility. What does humility mean to someone in the audience? Different folks, anybody have their definition of humility? Where does the word humility come from?
Humble.
Humble, right? So what does it mean to be humble? Right? What does being humble mean to you? We got one right here, Leotis.
A sense of oneself.
Okay, having a sense of yourself. Who else has a definition of humble or humility? Dr. Keller?
For me, humility is not only having a sense of self, but also treating somebody else with that same self of self.
Okay.
A sense of respect and acceptance.
Okay, we have any other definitions of humility?
Probably understanding.
I'm sorry?
Understanding.
Understanding, okay. Kenna?
Knowing that you might not be the one who has all the answers in the room.
Oh. Looks like you almost defined cultural humility. Okay, so just humility, and I did define culture for a specific reason. We'll go back to that, right? But humility is a modest or low view of one's importance or humbleness. That's Webster's definition, right? So, right, understanding you may not have all the answers, right? Centering other people as you do yourself, right? Having an understanding of yourself so you can truly understand other people, right? Taking a humility approach and matching it with culture, right? So you said culture is heritage. What were some of the other definitions of culture that we heard? Practices, traditions, right? And a lot of us identify culture with what? Race, right? What we'll be talking about today in this section will be how do we, as service providers, as CBOs, as allies, and as friends, how do we provide a cultural humility approach? So if culture is often about your practices, your traditions, and your beliefs, and what other word did you all say? Race. If that's all wrapped up in the culture, if I'm a white lady, how do I serve a person who's living with HIV that is also black? Right? I would have to take a what? Cultural humility approach. Because I don't understand the what? The practices, the traditions, the heritage. I wouldn't understand that. I would have to be a black person, or I would have had to done some type of studying, right? So now I'm going to circle that back to what you talked about and what you talked about, Renee, Edward and Renee. When we're talking about messaging, right, it's not just about academia, but culture is wrapped all through messaging and how messaging can connect or will not connect. Because it is sometimes it's not about the academic in the words you use, it's the approach that you use, right? So a cultural humility approach can be having a party with a purpose, right? Because you're meeting them where they are and the messaging is specific to something they can resonate with. But to be more specific, in Memphis, anybody been looking at the bar? Oh, look, now I gotta make eye contact. Anybody been looking at the bartender over there? If you look at the back of his shirt, if you look at the back of his shirt, it says, what does it say?
Number one drink.
It's shot mine or smash mine, yes. So in Memphis we say, what's up, mine? Mine is one of our words, right? So if you were to come to Memphis and have an event that was around testing and you say, know your status, mine. That's a specific way that speaks to the direct culture of what? Memphis, right? So that's a cultural humility approach when it comes to specific messaging. And sometimes we lose somebody had a, okay, oh yes. Sometimes we lose the messaging. I mean, we lose people because we don't know the messaging. And it's what we would say watered down. There's no jargon. There's no logo. But you still do not know the culture of the people you're speaking with, so you miss that opportunity. Go ahead.
But does Maine have a gender?
No, it doesn't. And Maine is gender neutral, so you'll be really all the way in. Yes, Maine is actually, I love that you brought, you got to give me a high five on that.
Give it up to him.
I got to remember to include that in my next facilitation. Write that down, Daniel. Yes, the gender neutral approach of Maine. I like that. So, we're going to do a little reading. We're talking about healthcare as a cultural borderland. Let's go with that. Can someone tell me what is healthcare? What is healthcare? We all work in public health, but what is healthcare? Okay, it is. We're going to be getting to that. Expensive.
Reactive, not proactive.
Okay.
I say a piece of shit.
Okay, a piece of shit. Reactive, not proactive. A mess, a joke. So, title says, healthcare as a what? Cultural borderland. What are borders? Limits, right? Cutoffs. Your boundaries, your barriers, right? So, we've already said it, right? Healthcare essentially has become a
Restricted place.
It's a restricted place, but guess what? What's the word we just skipped over? Cultural borderland. So what we just talked about, right? How people not knowing and assessing the culture of the very people they work with can create what? Borders, right? As a clinician, how do you best care for patients from a wide variety of backgrounds? Cultural diversity is not merely a matter of pluralism or multiculturalism. It is often accompanied by unequal or inadequate healthcare, right? Very often, cultural diversity and health disparities go hand in hand. As a response to such inequities, various forms of cultural competence training are now viewed as an essential curriculum component in medical education programs and a key element of effective practice. I'm sorry, I might be standing in front of you, sorry. Now, let's talk about this. Cultural competency is now viewed as a what? Essential curriculum component in medical programs and a key element, right? But that does not say cultural humility, right? It says cultural competence. Somebody give me your definition of competence. Raise your hand, Leotis will come to you. What is competence? Or let's take it a step further. What's the difference between cultural humility and cultural competence? Can somebody feed me that? Here we go, Yasmin, and then, I'm sorry, Timmy, we want you to. What's your name again? Yvonne? Yvonne, okay, you from Memphis, so we're gonna hear from you.
Okay. Cultural competence, you can just like check it off. It's like a concept that I got, like you take the multiple choice test at school and you just guess D and you happen to get it. But like, cultural humility is the consideration that you're constantly willing to try to understand.
Exactly, she said it perfectly. Competence is just, yes, I know, okay. Yes, I know about the pronouns. Great. But thank you. Humility is being willing to accept that and use that and try to make that person feel comfortable and
Love that.
I think it helps to establish a connection. It's more relative to it.
Okay, I like that. So, cultural competence has become, and I'm sure everybody in here has been in a cultural competence training, right? Oftentimes it's not the people that need it that's in the training. We're often, and I'm an executive director, so I'll say I send people to trainings that don't, but my staff just so happens to have these understandings, right? But there are oftentimes people in organizations or CBOs or provider spaces that can go to these trainings, right? And it will make more of an impact because they have no idea about what their training entails. So, come back. However, these educational innovations have also come under fire. Some critiques center upon that vexed and elusive concept, culture. It's a better way to frame the task of offering health, borderland, or as part of a much larger borderland. Might cultural competence come to look rather different from or more than becoming acquainted with various cultural belief patterns presumed to characterize the thinking and values of minority populations? When it comes to chronic health conditions, when a great deal is expected of both the patient and the family caregivers, the clinic is just one setting within a border community of care that extends far beyond the healthcare setting. So, what we're talking about is those social determinants of health, right? The things that people come into, right? It's not just about their culture, but what the experiences of the culture are when it comes to healthcare, right? That's all a part of you having a cultural humility approach. It's not like, because sometimes we know we got some of our white people and our white friends that go and they call you sister. And it's just, that's not having cultural humility, right? It's more than just learning and mirroring those nuances that you think are cute about a culture. It's more about honoring those nuances and those experiences that are somewhat traumatic, honoring those experiences and validating those experiences and saying, hey, I may never understand the experience, but I validate it as a truth because you said so, right? This is what it's about when we're talking about having a cultural humility approach, because otherwise you'll just be like Yasmin said, checking the list off, right? But competence is also about a fast, let me look it up. I had the edition. It's about a fast way and a way to get things done. So if we really care about something, do we do it fast?
No.
The ability to do something successfully and efficiently, right? So competence is looked at as successful and efficient, right? For me, efficiency is not enough. Success is not enough. I want greatness in whatever I do, right? And in order to even, the key to being great for me has always been to be humble. Not just in when I'm talking to other people, but even with myself, right? Humbling myself to even understand my own experiences. So assessing your own culture is key to what? Understanding and assessing someone else's culture. Because if their beliefs, if their practices, if their traditions happen to conflict with yours, if you have not already understood and assessed your own culture, you may traumatize that particular participant or that patient because you haven't dealt with your own shit.
All right.
All right, healthcare is a cultural borderland. I said I was gonna call on some new people. Joe, can you read? Oh, and then that is you coming next with bullet point number 2. Joe, can you read the first bullet point?
Only because you asked.
Thank you.
Culture has come to be reconceived not as a bounded and homogeneous whole, but as a fractious and porous borderland.
Okay, stop right there. Thank you, Joe. Let's break it down. When we think about culture, right, what they're saying is it has been reimagined, okay, or reconceived. Because often, and this is what we want when we're talking about cultural humility, because in the real world, culture is still sometimes looked at as bounded. Sometimes culture is still looked at as homogeneous, right? A lot of the same. And I think that, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole area, but I was loving what you were talking about earlier when we talked about violence that happens within the black community, you know, from each other, right? But a lot of what happens within the black community is we have different pockets of culture within our culture, and there's differences in those pockets. And we often have conflict, right? So, and I'm a person that has experienced a lot of violence from my community and also live in fear every day of that. Live in fear just living in Memphis, right? Coming to this training was harder for me than any other training I've gone to because it takes place in Memphis, in downtown. I don't go out like that because I fear the violence that happens within the community, right? But we have to understand that in order for us to move forward as a community of black people, we have to honor our differences.
True.
We have to honor those pockets, right, of culture. And we have to take a cultural humility approach with each other. So that definitely means LGBTQIA people, people living with HIV who are providing services to LGBTQIA people and people living with HIV. We must be even more humble and even more culturally humble when we're providing service, right? Because we think we know the best. The more years we worked in the community, we have 2 questions. The more years we work in the community, and then when you're a person coming from that same experience, and then sometimes of another generation, we love on our community in a way that these young folks may not understand.
Absolutely.
And we have to reassess the delivery and the messages that we feed to the young people these days who are living with HIV versus the messages that we used 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I'm going to come to you, thank you. I'm going to come to you, that is, but I want to get their comments and then I want you to read bullet point number 2. Thank you.
I want to express, we also have that problem within our family.
Oh, yes.
Because I have 2 sons, and one did not understand or refused to understand that I was a lesbian. And when I came out, I didn't date for like 3 years because I wanted to transition in my own mind. And when I did so, he left me at 17. Now he's 40, okay? And he's still going through the same problem, but I'll tell him, don't come to my door with that bullshit. If you feel that you don't like me, don't call me, don't come to my door, because if you do, I will call the police.
Specific messaging. Those are specific messages to the culture. You spoke to them.
So we have to, we have to accept that we have it in our own family, even within the boundaries of our household.
Who was the other person?
Justin.
Oh.
So I just want to say the first bullet point kind of spoke to me because I like to sort of think in analogies. And so when I think of culture, I kind of think of like an animal cell, like a human cell. And cells have qualities, what we call selectively permeable, meaning they let certain things in, but also they let certain things out.
Biology.
So it's up to us to sort of decide, as a culture, what we want to get rid of.
When I tell you, y'all, I know, Justin, y'all are already, Thaddeus needs the mic, elders. We are already like, and I'm loving this because this session naturally flows. Not that it's Matthews, baby. No! No, that's
Mr. Works.
okay, so, but I love where this is going because you all are such experts in your field and you all are such genuine people that y'all are floating this training on. It like giving me cues to even make me better. So I love that you said that it happens within our family because what happens is not only do we associate culture with race, not only do we associate culture with practices and traditions nationally, but our biggest culture is how we interact with our family. That's the first culture that we learn, right? And that you're born into, right? And they implement these things into you. Some things they don't want you to do that they do, you still end up doing, right? It's all these things that you observe and that you learn from being in community. Being in community. So if providers and CBOs and us as well, if we want to learn about cultures of other people, we have to do what? Be in community. Be in community. Not just having these little conversations. You have to delve into those cultural practices, right? But knowing and understanding that and remember I said deal with your own shit. I like that you said family, because when we can understand how to have specific, that one auntie, you got to say this to her. That one uncle, you got to talk to him this way. Then granny and papa, you got to communicate with them another way, right? But that's just the immediate culture between you and that one person, right? So that is how complex and how deep you have to dive into your relationships with participants or clients. I like the word participants. Your participants or your clients, so that you can really understand not only their experience outside of the home, but their experience where? Inside your organizations. That is, give me that second definition.
When it comes to chronic health condition, when a great deal is expected of both the patient and family givers, the clinic is just one setting within a broader community of care that extends far beyond the healthcare setting.
So what is this saying? I know. Are you sure you ain't that is Matthews? Wait a minute now. A celebrity in the building, giving Barry White teas on it. I couldn't even pay attention to the devil. I walked all in front of the thing. I was nervous. A lot going on. Oh, let me get myself together. Oh, Lord. Okay. Yes, but when it comes to chronic health conditions, a great deal is expected of both the patient and family caregivers. And this is not, I am going to say it like this. I'm not omitting people. I'm going to call out. But I'm going to say, black people, how many of us have had family where they're sick and we are the caregivers and it's just taxing, right? And as a black person, this is not our first time at this rodeo. Oftentimes, I almost got emotional. Let me pull it back in. Because I don't want to get emotional. I want to facilitate. But oftentimes, we take care of our mamas after seeing our mamas take care of their mamas. We take care of our kids because our kids can't take care of their kids. And their kids become our kids, right? So, and here's the thing. So, to my other races in the room, this right now is a chance for you all to identify what it looks like to be in the culture with people, to be in community. Because right now you're getting a chance to experience what we feel is true to our people, right? Yeah. As black people, we have inherently taken care of each other, no matter the bloodline, right? So on the slave ship, if you down there as a mama with your kids, and you're blindfolded for 6 to 9 months traveling over the ocean, you don't know where you're going, you've been taken from your home and taken from your land. You wake up and you see a dead black baby. You become that baby's mama, right? So these are things that have gone on in our culture and in our history that inherently are connected to who we are. So that's how sometimes when we, thank you, Leo, I was trying to make my way over there. So that's how come sometimes as black people, that's why I said we gotta make sure that we take a cultural humility approach because we are inherently connected to being the nurturers and the parents.
And I want to add as well, speaking culturally, a lot of times people did not and still don't understand why we had what we call gay families. And the reason why those gay families were extremely huge and big, and one of the things that people failed to understand when we come down to talking about taking care of people, we become not only the mama and daddies and the grandmas and aunties and cousins, now we become the person that take them back and forth to the doctor. Now we're the person that's got to take them into our home to make sure, take our children, our family to the homes and take care of them, make sure, and go to the point where we have to sometimes lay them to rest. Yes. And it is understood that I wish a family bloodline member would come in and say any damn thing when I had to go from childhood up until adult and take care of this when it comes down to burial and everything else. Then you want to come in and say, oh my baby.
That's my baby.
We don't even speak. Because I guarantee you everybody around in the culture, and the part that I like about Memphis is when it comes down to us needing something, we forget all about who, what, when, where, how, are you this, can we? We forget about all of that. We all come together as one, and what do we say? What's the need? And that's the part that when it comes down to, especially in our agencies, and I'm not going to get on my soapbox or anything, but the part that gets me the most is, and I tell people all the time, baby, you don't know when it's going to be your child in this line needing this service. Let me go even better. You don't know when it's going to be you in this line needing this service. And then you want to come, remember? Because my grandma used to tell us all the time, baby, you don't know who will have to bring you a glass of water. And you don't know who will have to wipe your ass. And the main person that you dog down will be the one, have to be the one that identified. So when it comes down to that culture part, I'm really, because people ask me, well, people have no idea, I'm going to sit down. They have no idea what the name Ladybug has opened up doors, paid rent bills, utilities, and it wasn't because of that. People, where you get it from? From somebody that knew me as a child, that saw me grow up and put that on me. And it wasn't in a negative way. It's in a beautiful way. And people that know the culture of Memphis, it's a respect. Am I correct? Yes. And so that's the beauty of all of that, and I'm glad that we're on that. But the cultural part about it, and if you don't know, humble yourself and sit down and wait until somebody tell you what you need to do. Instead of you going, oh, I'm very white, I can do this. Hold up. learn what's going on first, because a lot of times your surroundings will tell you what to do and what not to do if you pay attention to their culture.
Yep.
Thank you.
When it comes to chronic health conditions, I have had bad experiences. I came from the Midwest to Memphis, Tennessee, and you expect one thing from a caregiver, and they give you a runaround. It's about the dollars for a lot of the caregivers. It's not about their health, your health, or what you go through. They don't know how to talk to you, and you got to get on layman terms. Who knows about non-binary? What you got to break stuff down to people nowadays to let them know how to treat you, and don't accept them treating you any other way than you what you want to be treated. You know what you need, and if you can't get it there, consult somebody else and use compassion when you do it. You know, I can go to an office and a lot of people are sitting there and I go, "That's good morning, how you doing? Oh, you look so good, you're so fine." There are other people got attitudes, but I came and gave them, so they'll work with you. We go there, "Hey, I need this and I need that." You can't use that. It's your positive tact that you must use to people in order to get that care that you desperately need. When you need your medication, you go there, you're going to have to wait. It's a process, and that's what we must learn in this era and this day and time, that it's a process. It's channels that we have to take to get services.
Thank you, and I'm so glad you brought it back, right? So what we're talking about, because we went, I took us all the way around, I want to bring us back. So now we're coming back and we're talking about the cultural, right? We're talking about culture, humility, but like, and her pronouns are Granny, so I'm saying like Granny said, but like Granny said, when we are in doctors and we are going to providers, when we go, we want good service, and when we're those providers, we want to provide good service. So what we have to do is take time to have compassion, take time, like Ladybug said, to just ask and be humble, right? When it's information we want to know, we have to lean on their culture to give us their guidance, right? All right. Learning to, see how everything naturally flows? Learning to read the culture of a clinic and an individual health professional means learning how to undertake the just right non-compliance that can lead to getting care or not getting care. Then you have the hidden curriculum. Those attitudes, beliefs, and practices that are informally taught. We talked about that even in our own cultures of our family, right? Sometimes you get, how many of y'all have had a job, you get in there, and baby, you dress to the T every day, and some of the younger people might not understand this, because I know in our generation, you know, I come in, I get on heels every day, and I'm looking around, jeans everywhere, and I know if they got on jeans, because they might have some tights on. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And I love me a tight. And so I'm looking. I worked there about 3 weeks. I'm like, damn. Before you know it, I came in my jeans. I had my tights on, right? And it was okay, right? And then when new people came, I wasn't even ashamed. Everything I knew, I thought I learned, had gone out the door because of the culture of how that particular place ran their organization. So we have to take a cue to that, right? So one, we have to be the change we want to see and model the behavior that we expect sometimes out of the providers in the building. You have to model that, right? And because someone coming down the pipeline is going to look at you and they're going to say, oh, okay, this is how they do the work here, right? So now I'm talking to the manager and the supervisors of it all. They have people under you, right? Sometimes we're working for people or for organizations that the structures are not aligned with the beliefs that we have, right? But we as managers and supervisors have to be able to stand in the space. And Black and Pink, baby, know I stood in the space. You have to be able to stand in the space to say, I'm not only going to model the behavior, right, that I know that these people need, but I'm also going to give them the life lessons And I'm going to give them those cultural lessons so that they can take this and thrive with it, even to the point where a part of this escalated. That's why I thought it was so important to have our team here, because of this deep dive into culture, right? And look at this one. The hidden curriculum is a culture that is being taught unconsciously and transferred from one generation of healthcare professionals to the next. This is, and we're so lucky oftentimes if we can have an intergenerational team or staff, right? Baby, I love, where is Yasmin? Okay, right. Yasmin and Dawson, raise your hand. They're both early 20s, and they both work with me, and baby, having those young people working with me is the best thing that can happen for me, because I can learn from someone too, right? A lot of the people, when you're working with people your age, you learn from them in the beginning as well, but y'all develop a culture. And it's comfortable for what? Y'all's age group. You have to push your programs to be comfortable and accessible to people of all ages, right? Because you want to have a holistic approach, not just to the individual people, but to the participants and clients as a whole. So this is an example of an experience, and we don't have much time. I'm sorry, we're going to move forward, but I'm going to talk about this one. The nurses often had difficulty finding a good vein and would sometimes prick her little girl many times before succeeding. When she tried to show them how to do a better job, nurses were often irritated that she was assuming the expert role. She gradually acquired various ways to suggest improvements. One strategy she devised was to reiterate that any skills she had learned was a direct result of the training of health professionals, not something she acquired out of her own practice. Instead of saying, oh, I found that doing it this way works better, she would say things like, oh, I think this is how the caseworker nurse taught me to do it. Do you think that might be a good idea? What do you think? This story, I'm sure, resonates with a lot of people. Right? How many times have we gone to the doctor and got to the point where we're here? When you get to this point, you basically kissing ass. You telling them what they need to hear for them to actually believe that you know best about your body. And this is what we experience, and I want you all to pay attention to the commonalities and pay attention to how everything comes back. So we've talked about, right, the genocide of black bodies through medical experiments. We went through that. Daniel did an amazing job on that. And it brought us all the way back to here, where we're talking about advocating for our own bodies, right? But still being under the role of not knowing, not having control, right? Not being able to exercise our bodily autonomy. Because if it was a white woman, you prick her wrong, baby, she's stopping you time number one. And she want the founder and the executive director to come out and prick her, baby. Right? So we have to take a cue from white women on that as black people, and sometimes standing there, but we don't want to be perceived as what? Angry or aggressive, right? Or have the expert role. So as healthcare providers and as people who are support people to these patients or clients, we have to keep stories like this dead in the center of our hearts and minds, right? Because we've actually had this experience too, right? And oftentimes we will be conditioned, and I say we will become conditioned under the culture of the organizations that we work at, and do not always validate our participants' experience as the truth, especially when it comes to our organizations. Let's just hear that. There's a lot of people that come through organizations and I was gonna say make accusations, I'm not gonna use it, that come and speak on their experiences, and we don't sometimes believe them, and guess what else we don't do? We don't take time to advocate for them. And that's what we need to be doing. We pretty much talked about culture. Let's go over these definitions. So, Helen, can you read the first definition, please? I just love trying to remember everybody's name, so if I get your name right, just snap me up. I mean wrong, snap me up.
Okay, if I can see.
Culture, reading number 1?
Yes.
Okay. Social system of meaning and custom that is developed by a group of people to assure its adoption and survival. These groups are distinguished by a set of unspoken values and beliefs, pattern of thinking, behaviors, and styles of communication.
Okay, number 2, culture. Patterns of learned behaviors and values which are shared among members of a designated group and usually transmitted to others of their group through time.
Thank you. I love these two, right? How many of y'all like these two definitions for culture? Because I know we went over culture. You like these? Okay, I love, number 4 is my favorite. Daniel, we already talked about that one, but I love number 2 as well. But let's go over. Number 1 is a social system of meaning and customs that is, what's the next word? Developed. So, in order for a culture to exist, someone must develop, right? Develop a group of people to assure its adaptation and survival, right? So, can we agree that some of the things within our culture are directly connected to our survival? Mine is directly connected to eating soul food. That's part of my black culture, baby. In order for me to survive, I got to have some greens sometime. Okay. These groups are distinguished by a set of unspoken values. Unspoken. Beliefs, patterns, thinkings, behaviors, and styles of communication. So we talked about the Memphis and the Maine. You know, and this one, the peace sign, when I tell you, I remember when I was young, the peace sign was the thing. These new babies and young people, they brought the peace sign back, but it's real sexy now. We used to be throwing peace for peace. Now they throw peace at the booty and peace at the titties. You like, oh, okay. So we using the peace sign. But it's a common, unspoken, right, hand gesture that everybody understands. It ties us together. Now, cultures, patterns of learned behaviors and values, which are shared among members of a designated group, usually transmitted to others of their group through what? Time. How many of y'all have learned something from your mama and your family? You didn't even know you did it until you realized you watch Young and the Restless every day at 11 a.m. just like your grandma. You got a whole job. You at the job going on break. In your phone watching Victor Newman. Yes. Right? So it's a part of your culture. Culture, number 3.
Totality of socially transmitted behavior patterns, arts, beliefs, values, customs, life ways, and all of the products of human work and thought characteristics of a population of people that guide their worldview decision making.
This is a good one. So we talked about developing the culture. Then we talked about the learned behaviors that are passed through time, right? Then we talked about, let's get all the way down here, characteristics of a population that guide their what? Worldview and decision making. How about Martin Luther King and their dream? And then Obama came on through as the living dream, the living walking dream, right? And how many years we sat with those values. We fought for those leaders that look like Obama, right? And we saw it in real time, right? But it all was a part of our culture and our unspoken belief in their what? Dream. Okay, and then number 4 is amazing. The software of the mind. Daniel broke it down. Constantly updating. Constantly updating. So this is always my favorite. Is the software of the mind. Because, and let's just go back to family. How many of you are, as much as you love your family, you also have had to cut some of those traditions. You had to nip some of those practices in the bud. You had to exit some of those family gatherings and functions, right? And you adapted a new culture for your family that you will be able to develop yourself, pass over time to those people in your family or your group, and then hopefully influence their decision making and their views of the world and other people, right? That is what we're also trying to do as organizations, right? We're trying to develop new practices, new mindsets, and then we want to pass them through time. You don't want to just pick up a culture and just say, oh, we're going to do it for 2 weeks or 2 months. You really want the organization and the CBOs and the clinics to have transformative change that lasts. That changes how the participants and the people that work there view the world, change how they make the decisions within the organization for the people they serve, but also consistently reimagine what it may look like for any new participant that may come in. And this has been Cultural Humility Part 1. We're going to do the break. Y'all want to?
Yes. After that, we need a break.
Yeah, let's take a 10-minute break. It is 10:30, so we'll start back at 10:40.
We got some snacks. Little snacks. Okay. You know what they said? They did something with regular snacks. Hey, y'all, snacks back.
Fantastic. Great job.
Thank you so much.